All right. So it looks like Liz is first. Oh, yeah, with the paid extensions.
Yeah, so surprise, surprise, this unmonitored ecosystem turned out to be problematic. Uh, all these shady developers and companies were setting up these really malicious and nasty Chrome extensions, and since Google wasn't really checking those out, it's kind of like the way the Play Store was
Yeah.
to begin with, and maybe still is, where it's like the wild, wild west. You write a
Oh,
Chrome
it still is.
extension. Yeah, you write a
Lots of
Chrome
malware.
extension and up it goes, and there's no monitoring. So they had to kind of shut that down because it was leading to a lot of problems.
Yeah, I've never paid for a Chrome extension or an Android app either.
Yeah.
I guess.
No.
Yeah, like that's one of those. Why would you? There's lots of free stuff that does the same thing,
Yeah.
and by reputable people.
Yeah, I would bet that some of the problematic stuff here, well, I know it for a fact that some of the problematic stuff was free, like even on the Chrome Web Store. So
Yeah, and I remember the Firefox extensions. If you have a popular one, bad guys will offer to buy it from you just to use it to put on malware.
Yep.
So,
yep, same deal
yeah.
here.
Yeah, WordPress extensions too. This whole
Yep.
extensible framework thing has got a dark side.
Yeah, so they had to kind of shut that down, at least until they figure something else out.
Yeah. All right, and here's the SIM swappers. Yeah, that's the new hotness.
Yep, that's still happening. This time it was targeting the employees
Oh yeah.
of the telecom companies to get access to those SIMs and swap them.
That's a pretty good idea, because the ones I heard before rely on social engineering, the phone company, and this would be a more effective technique, I guess.
Right, bless you. Like this is going straight to the telecom companies and social engineering them.
Yeah.
It's funny
And
because I have a story about this too. The SIM swapping is sort of the new hotness in attack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this talks about the hitting those stores, those authorized retailer stores, or reseller stores.
Yeah.
That you see, like the Metro or T-Mobile, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because those people aren't necessarily thinking security, of course.
Yep.
And that's a great target to attack, because I'm sure you can get a lot of accounts that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the main thing is you defeat two-factor.
Yep.
All right. And I thought this is pretty interesting. The coronavirus is, of course, getting lots of news. They canceled DEF CON. They've locked the whole country of China down for 6 months. It's crazy. And so I thought it's interesting. The Russian media are saying it's an American conspiracy and it's an American biological warfare weapon that got loose. And all this stuff is spinning around and supported by official news agencies in Russia. And I think this is very interesting because, the modern right wing is totally following Putin's playbook, which is this new form of disinformation that's beyond propaganda, where you annihilate the concept of truth and you get people excited. So all they care about is that they're mad at somebody, like blaming Hillary Clinton, and they never even realize that they're hearing totally contradictory nonsense. It's how Putin's controlling Russia, and it's how the right wing is controlling America. It's important to understand. I talked about it a lot in my class last semester about this stuff. It's very different than the old disinformation where you would try to make a lie and try to bolster it up. Now it doesn't matter if it's true at all. It just has to be exciting. And people never stop to think about whether it's true or even care about what the truth is anymore. So,
no, especially because a big part of the reason this works is confirmation bias, and a lot of these the people that are behind the disinformation campaigns are really, really good at playing on people's desire for confirmation bias.
yes, and I just heard Ezra Klein talking about his new book, Why We Are Polarized, and he was talking about this. people now join one team or the other, and their identities being on the team. Anything that seems like it came from their team, they will accept it even if it contradicts other things, because all they really care about is knowing that you're on the right team.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it makes
Right.
sense. I mean, watch, if you say anything political, people only hear like a couple of keywords to decide which side you're on and then respond to that. It doesn't matter what you say. And
Yeah.
this, I think, is something that the smarter salespeople and preachers like Trump have known all along, which is you don't have to make sense. Logic doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. What matters is how you make people feel.
Yep.
And that's an important thing to realize. And I like a lot of people on the left, I think I spend a lot of time being angry and saying it shouldn't be this way. It doesn't matter whether it should be that way. It is this way.
Yeah.
And you have to cope with reality the way it is. Anyway.
Right.
So anyway, I think it's real important as social engineering moves up in hacking and the psychology, we begin to realize and admit that the psychology is really, really important and often more important than math and truth and technology and logic.
Yeah, big time. It's interesting because this is the first time that I'd heard this particular spin put on it.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it doesn't surprise me at all. I'm coming to expect this sort of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's,
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like,
that's
oh,
how you
okay.
move in.
You kind of shrug it off now.
Yeah.
Well, once you're done resisting it out of anger, then you just realize it's the way things are, and then you try and cope with it. And that makes me realize, this is why image matters. I used to say all that matters is reality, but no, the way things look also matters. Anyway.
I think part of the issue too is that one thing that I've noticed is that people tend to only get they only tend to get their news from like one or two sources typically, and they keep going back to the trough, so to speak. And instead of trying to look at things sort of across the board or checking a variety of sources, ideally in a variety of countries, I think it becomes easier to fool people that way.
Yes.
I guess part of it is you're fooling yourself too, because that's what you want to believe.
Well, I think this is a big thing about human social conformity and the herd instinct. What really matters to people most is being in the middle of their herd, and logic and truth and stuff doesn't really matter so much. So
Yeah,
when you listen to what people say, they aren't listening so much to gain information. They're just listening for course correction. Oh, I better move over here to make sure I'm in the middle of the herd.
I read a theory that this kind of goes back to tribalism with primitive humans, because that's how it's an evolutionary thing, because it keeps you alive as long as you go along with the tribe.
Oh, I think it is. Yeah. So
Definitely seems like.
Yeah.
I think it's the same instinct of any herd animal to just stay in the herd. It's not logic, but it is absolutely true that you'll survive better if you just stay in the middle of the herd.
Yeah.
So this is the Facebook phishing.
Yeah, speaking of which, speaking of staying with the herd, so this I thought that this was a really good analysis of how a successful phishing campaign works, because something we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is how effective phishing still is, and that I think we were talking last week, it was like over 55% of businesses still get phished. Well, this is a great example of how attackers can use fairly simple means to mount a sophisticated phishing attack. I think another kind of salient point here is this attack uses, this makes use of the ever-growing Facebook ecosystem of integrations. And so the way that this is really effective is essentially the attackers take this, what is it called again? I think it's like Facebook pages or something like that. The notes. And essentially, it's sort of like GitHub pages where you can use it to create a blog or website. And the way that the UI is set up for this, it looks like it's an official Facebook product, even though it's really not. Any user can use it. And so that makes it really effective for phishing campaigns, because an attacker can make a landing page or a redirect page look exactly like a real Facebook corporation page, and so they can use it to harvest people's credentials and stuff like that. So this stuff's really common. I just thought that this article was a really good analysis of it, and kind of gives a good demonstration of how it works.
Yeah, I think domain
Pretty
filtering is
interesting.
very limited.
Yeah. Yeah, and more sites like this are building in endless, like sort of endless integrations. Like Facebook sometimes sort of feels like a product factory and a feature factory in that they just keep adding and adding and adding. One of them is they've integrated like this Facebook for Business thing, which is sort of terrifying when you think about it because it opens up all these vectors.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of which, how did we do in the Invitational? Did they ever put out the scores?
I don't know. As of last night, they hadn't published them yet. So
Yeah, it reminds me because they always publish them on Facebook. Anyway, so
yeah,
That's right, they do.
That would be pretty cool. You could put up fake scores and like fool people, and that ought to count.
you totally
right?
could. You totally could. That's funny.
Anyway, so I thought this was important. I heard about this one. New York City wants to make it illegal to pay the ransom.
Yep, by 2022, they will no longer use taxpayer money to pay off ransoms. That's the two bills that I think.
And they passed the Senate and the Assembly.
No, it's still in committee.
Oh, it's still back there. Okay, so
yeah.
I mean that's a highly controversial thing to do. I can see how it would be better for the world if nobody paid the ransom, but it would be better for everybody involved if they pay the ransom because it's usually a huge difference in price.
Right.
It's certainly time
they're
for
saying basically nobody in New York can pay the ransom using taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, well, that might make sense for the government to be the one that stands up against it.
How's that going to work though? I'm curious how this to me seems like one of those, we talk a lot about how people making legislation don't really understand the underlying technical aspects of it or logistical. How's this going to work?
So there's some line in there that says that they want to send money instead to the people who's supposed to do things like business disaster or BCDR. That's pretty much it.
I mean, that's smart and proactive, but what's going to happen for, with government, there's always somebody falling through the cracks. So what's going to happen when all the village hospital gets hit by ransomware and they can't carry on operations?
Well, yeah, there's certainly that. There'll be a business disruption, but of course, in the long run, it ought to mean they actually have backups and stuff. But
yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Yep. So I thought this was great. You can now get Facebook's activity, and even if you quit using Facebook, you can still see the activity. And of course, they still know everything about everybody because everybody has a like button on their page. So Facebook is still seeing everything you do, even when you're not using Facebook. And that's what this guy found. He quit using Facebook years ago, and still they have records of every site he went to and everything. In fact, someone else said that even after you delete your Facebook account, they're still tracking you, which I'm sure the same thing's true of Google. They have a bunch of ways to track you. And being directly logged into Facebook is just the smallest part of it. So we're in a strange place where many of these big corporations know everything about everybody, and we seem to be well past having any law to stop it or anything.
Right. Any law now would be jarring to them.
Yeah, and a lot of people are trying to figure out how to write it, but the amount of money involved is already staggering. But one thing you could do is you could at least be more aware of it. Anyway,
yes, because also the other problem I think is that these companies have sort of unlimited bottomless money pits for lobbying. So I mean, even when we get legislation passed, it seems like the teeth is sort of taken out of it a lot of the time.
Well, if they put in like Warren or Bernie, they'll actually do something about this stuff because they're highly willing to go to war against big tech. But I don't think anybody else would. Bloomberg wouldn't.
No.
Anyway, yeah, here's the SIM swap.
Yeah, so to build on kind of on Irvin's earlier story, here's a pretty good example of this might have been the biggest thing, the biggest heist I've ever heard of using it. And what's amazing to me is that this is a teenager pulled this off. And SIM swaps are not new. This has been going on for, this has been a known attack vector for years. But again, like phishing, it's still very effective when implemented the right way. And this kid, man, he got into people's crypto wallets and stole a ton of money, allegedly. Supposedly he only got like 300 grand out of Canadians, but 50 million from Americans. So
It's just amazing that people would put that kind of money on their phone in a crypto wallet. That's insane.
yeah,
That ought to be in cold storage.
yeah. The best part is that they cut him loose on like 200 grand bail Canadian, which is nothing comparatively.
Like, there it is. There, I'm out.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully they impounded the assets.
I can't imagine this guy would be like a flight risk or anything. But it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, happens. But to speak to your point, one guy in the article said that he had like $1 million stolen.
Well, if I was writing a crypto wallet, I would just say, to put in more than 10,000, it's going to pop up a box and say, dude, you can't leave this much money on the phone. What are you, nuts?
Yeah, I don't, that blows my mind that someone would do that.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing that happens with crypto is people don't understand it and they lose all their money. Some major investor just lost all his crypto last week and said, oh, I hate Bitcoin now. I lost my private key and it's all gone. And he had a lot.
That's so crazy. And it said at the end of the article that some people lost substantially more than $1 million. So
yeah,
I mean, that's just crazy to me.
It is. I mean, obviously they don't understand the technology at all. I mean, you could secure it and you need to secure it just like that much cash.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to just put that.
I just don't have enough faith in crypto. I mean, I don't have that kind of money, but even if I did, I don't think I would have that much faith in cryptocurrency. And I sure as hell don't have that much faith in a wallet on my phone.
I know. Well, I mean, it's like there's lots of proprietary data, like company data that's worth a lot of money, and there are ways to secure it. But you don't just put it on a phone.
I mean, depending in certain contexts and on certain phones, like I won't even access my bank account.
Yeah. Yep.
The year I spent using Android, I did no online banking on my phone.
Yeah, well, I'm finding out that iOS is almost as bad now. Thanks to Axiom X, I can see inside, and it's gruesome in there.
Yeah.
So this is, I saw this. Avast and I think AVG2 are selling your data.
Yep. So it's similar to Safari, where you think you're safe, you're not.
Yeah.
They had the same thing of we de-identify the information. We just send aggregate information, but it is possible to track back and figure out who's who.
Yeah.
Well, this anonymization is bogus. It's been that way for decades. AOL pretended to do it. Google pretended to do it. And you could easily figure out who somebody was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody did a really cool experiment with that where they took like a anonymized set of data from Google or something and were able to plot out somebody's entire like previous week, where they went, what they did, who they talked to, just all based off this anonymized data.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Makes you wonder how many other security companies are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's just ridiculous. And I've always wondered about these free antiviruses. They got to make money somehow. And Avast was
Right.
always pretty pushy about popping up boxes, trying to get you to pay. They were obviously pretty sleazy.
Yeah, and the other thing about Avast I noticed, it seems like a real resource hog. So
Yes.
when that happens, my first thought is what's going on under the hood, and why is there so much network transmission activity?
Yeah, it makes a good project. I remember Kirk did that one time, one of my students. He just put on a zone alarm and found all this private data being sent back home. All you got to
Wow.
do is like run Wireshark and you can see what they're doing. And they're typically sending way more data than they should. I don't know who in the world is still using zone alarm, but anyway.
Are they even around?
They still exist. The old versions are hilarious. I use them as malware in the rootkit class because the old versions were rootkits. So
wow,
that's the way all security measures were around 2008. They were all hooked into the Windows kernel like rootkits, so they're good examples. Anyway, this is one I saw all over the place. Colleges are requiring you to install an app so they can tell if you're in class. And some professors are saying, hey, this is great. I get like 98% attendance in class now that we're tracking them everywhere they go. And some of them say they're just using Bluetooth so it won't track you off campus, but other people say it really is tracking you off campus. And after one college did it, like 50 other colleges admit they're using it. And this thing is called Spotter EDU. So one thing that would be fun would be analyze this app and see how insecure it is on top of being pretty creepy. But the thing that surprises me is who the heck keeps track of attendance? I don't. My students can tune in online. They can watch the video later. You actually care whether they come physically to class? I thought that was over, man.
Well, it's kind of silly because a lot of employers use this too. And I was just having a conversation about this with a friend yesterday who was mad that they had to put it on their phone because it's a huge battery drainer, which makes sense. Of course it's going to drain your battery. It's sending out location pings every few seconds. But, we're talking about it and he says, well, I thought that was the whole reason I have a manager is to make sure that I'm there at work and doing the job I'm supposed to be doing, and I think, this is a little bit similar, I mean, if you're so concerned about physical attendance, aren't there better ways to collect that info?
Yeah, but I mean, I know you need physical attendance for your cyber competition class. And maybe a phys ed people needs physical attendance, but I totally don't. It doesn't matter. And now I'm working on this military contractor job. They don't even have an office. Everybody works remote.
Right.
There's no time clock and showing up at a physical office. That's like out of date. Oh
yeah, it totally is. And I don't really understand it either. I think it's just kind of old and outdated thinking, but there's still employers that think this way too. Even if you could work more effectively and efficiently as a distributed team, they still want everybody in the office so that you can monitor and micromanage. So,
yeah, I know in high school, and like grade school, they actually want to make sure you're there so you're not sneaking off smoking a cigarette. So that's another issue. It's basically
right, but they're minors. I mean, we're talking about people who aren't minors.
Right.
I know, but it seems to me disrespectful to tell adults you must show up on time or I'm locking the door. I mean, they've got kids, they got jobs, they got car trouble. I used to be that guy. I'm not going to give them trouble for missing a class.
Yeah, I don't even for my classes that require attendance. For my one class that requires attendance, I still have tried to come up with a couple ways that they can, make it up if they're not there. Cause I think it's just very short-sighted and foolish. I mean, I've used our public transit system before and I understand, there's a good time. There's a lot of times, your bus might not work or you might get stuck in the tunnel under the bay. And I'm not gonna fail somebody because of stuff like that. That's foolish.
And I got students that are in the military and are doing business trips and stuff, and they have to like tune in from another nation at a weird time and stuff. I totally respect that.
Yeah. All I care about is if you, put in the effort and learn some stuff. And I think that's not really related to your physical presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, but they are tracking them down. All right. Any other comments? Well, I guess that's it.
No,
I'll
that's
stop the
it.
recording. Let's go here.